Hi everyone. Before we get started, I wanted to take a moment to show you my workspace and some of the tools we'll be using throughout the class. So this right here is my workstation and desk setup. It's normally a bit messier than this, but the setup is essentially the same. Right here I have my MacBook Pro, and this big monitor hooked up to it is my drawing tablet. It's the Wacom Cintiq 22 HD. This is a professional drawing tablet that allows me to draw directly onto the screen, just like this. Pretty cool. Now, while some of you might be using the Cintiq, others might be using a tablet more like this one. This is the Wacom Intuos, and this is a more standard drawing tablet, or one more common you might see with people who are new to digital art. While this is the more common tablet, though, you'll see for beginners, it has a bit more of a learning curve to it than the Cintiq, in my opinion, because while you can draw directly onto the screen with the Cintiq, which feels more natural, this one acts more like a trackpad where you use your stylus to move the cursor on the monitor. While it might feel odd at first, this is actually a really good tablet and you'll get used to the feeling with practice. I started out on this very same tablet myself, so if you're using one of these to follow along with the class, it shouldn't be an issue as it can do the same things this can. It just might take a little getting used to if you're not familiar with this. To use your digital drawing tablet, you'll need a stylus, access to a keyboard, and a program that you can draw in. I use Adobe Photoshop, so most of the tips and tools I give you will be Photoshop-centric. However, Photoshop is a paid subscription, and it can be fairly pricey if you don't have a student discount. Fortunately, there are alternatives in digital drawing programs that you can use, such as Clip Studio Paint, Paint Tool SAI, Krita, and even Procreate. Although Procreate is a bit of a different type of interface. It's a little more painterly, but you'll be able to follow along these courses no matter what program you use, as most of these lessons are applicable to digital drawing in general. Now that we have Photoshop open, the first thing we want to do is select a new layer so that it's separate from the background. We're going to name this layer Sketch Lines because this will be the layer I do a loose sketch on. Then I'm going to select my brush tool in the side toolbar here. Then if you have downloaded custom brushes like I do, you'll see them here in the Tool Presets menu. You'll also have the Brush Preset menu here above it, which has a similar function, and the Brush Property menus here. The brush I'll be using for this stage is the hard pencil brush from the Kyle Webster brush pack. My eraser tool is set to a flat, round eraser. You can also change the shape and properties of your eraser the same way you would the brush tool with these same menus. So let's start sketching. I'm going to start by laying in a line of action and some basic shapes. A line of action refers to the dominant direction and form the pose will take. Having a strong line of action will give your drawing a sense of movement and purpose. Now that we've laid out the basic form, I'm going to start fleshing out some of the details. Now we'll have a better idea of what our character is going to look like. Once the loose sketching is done, we'll make another sketch layer here. We'll name Sketch Lines 2. This will be a more clean-looking sketch that will resemble the final drawing a little more closely. I'm going to lower the opacity of the layer below it so that it's easier to draw on top of. Here's where the opacity slider is for each layer you've selected. Once the sketch is finished, we'll lower the opacity on that and start adding our final line work, or ink lines as I call them. Let's create a new layer. Now sometimes I may decide to use a different brush for inking. Let's try the rough inking this time. No, I don't think we'll go with that. Let's look down for a different ink brush. How about the Amazing Cartoon Nib? There we go. That's the brush I'll choose. Set its smoothing. There we go, that makes our lines a little smoother. Now that my ink lines are done, I'm ready to begin adding color. Sometimes for my comic, I use a program that automatically fills in my line art with flat colors that I can later change with a paint bucket or magic wand tool. This time, however, since it's just a figure, we'll add our flat colors manually. We're going to create a new layer called color, or flat color, and we're going to place it underneath the ink lines here. I'll start with a good base color for the character, and then we'll fill in the rest from there. But first, let me pick a brush. Let's try my watercolor broad brush. All right. How about a nice tealish green? Maybe he's amphibious or reptilian. Once the colors are in, we can move on to adding highlights, shadows, and detail in the color. What we're trying to do is create another new layer, but this time the layer will be a clipping mask. A clipping mask is a layer that only appears inside another layer, or in this case, our render color layer will only show up within the boundaries of the color layer. I'm going to select New Layer, and then I'll hit the box, Create Clipping Mask, and we'll call that Render Color. And this will only stay within the confines of the color layer. Now, let's sample the color. Let's get something a little darker for the shadows. And here we go. You know what? Maybe I want something a little more blue. Yeah, let's try a different color. There we go. And then we just keep adding shadows and values strategically until it gives the monster a little bit more dimension and sense of shape. And there we go. I think we about have it. That is my basic drawing process. In our next video, I'll be talking about some of the little tricks and useful tips I use while drawing in Photoshop that'll save you some time and frustration. So thanks for watching.